Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey watching Happily Ever After 90 Day Fiancé. Let's get to the show.
I'm all alone again.
It seems like you've been under a ton of stress, like for the last couple of years.
It's been a wild ride, let me tell you.
Do you do anything to deal with the stress? I mean,
Drink?
do you ever meditate?
I don't even know how to do that.
You mind if I show you a little technique you can use just to calm yourself down from time to time?
I'll take any useful tool I can put in my box.
One of the most critical parts of self-care is being able to just detach from the world around you and live in the moment. This is super simple. Close your eyes.
So this is great. So I get a lot of questions about mindfulness, and of course, it's a wonderful thing. I don't use it in my practice, and I also don't practice it. I've done it before. I've practiced it off and on over the years. I was first exposed to mindfulness, 25 years ago. And yeah, there's tons of research pointing towards a lot of different benefits to a lot of different people. And for me, I just find that there are other ways that I can relax and other ways that I can be mindful. You know, the idea of being aware of your emotional state and the idea of being aware of how you think and being purposeful and intentional about the things you pay attention to, one could say that that's mindfulness. Another way of saying it is just emotional awareness or thought awareness or just awareness in general. And so that's usually what I call it. When I'm saying awareness, I'm usually talking about some of the principles in mindfulness as well. But yeah, there's a lot of benefits and it's a wonderful thing. The thing that I always worry about with people, especially men, is that they will attach themselves to mindfulness at the expense of their needs. That as their needs come up for them, like I need to have a relationship with a friend, or I need a hug, or I need someone to hear me, I need some interaction, I need socializing, I need to be heard, I need to express myself, that they will always turn to mindfulness as a solution to those needs, as if to say that those needs are actually bad, and that if you detach yourself from your needs, then you can reduce your suffering. And there's some wisdom to that, kind of, but overall, that's not a good idea. We need to acknowledge that we're animals, we're not robots, and we need to acknowledge that we need human beings, we need relationships, we need socializing, we need hugs, we need interactions, we need bonding and love, we need all those things. And to just turn to mindfulness, which I've seen some people do, is really going in the wrong direction. And it's a seductive idea for a lot of men and for a lot of people, but men in particular, because we're taught as men that we shouldn't need relationships. We shouldn't be vulnerable. We should be independent. And mindfulness really fits into that masculine mode, that toxic masculinity notion of, well, if I just detach myself from everything and I don't care about anything or anybody, then I can achieve full enlightenment. And of course, mindfulness people would never say this, and Buddhist monks would never say this either. But it can sometimes be bastardized by some people who are really suffering and looking for some toxic masculinity solution for the problems they're experiencing. But for some people, a more holistic approach is to be mindful that there's nothing wrong with mindfulness. It's a wonderful thing. It's evidence demonstrates on average it benefits people in a variety of ways: sleep and attention and work and relationships and emotional regulation and stress and physical issues. And, so mindfulness is great. But the holistic approach needs to also include a lot of other approaches, like, okay, how am I going to cultivate relationships with people so that I can reach out to them at any time? How am I going to cultivate relationships with people so that I can just ask for a hug whenever I need it? How can I cultivate a lifestyle of vulnerability where when I feel something that is distressing to me, I express it and someone is there that I know will receive it well. And I have a feeling that I have a tribe of people around me, that I'm in contact with people, and I'm doing mindfulness. So, but we got to start somewhere, and I'm glad that they're doing something, and I'm glad that Steve is in Colt's life.
Take a deep breath. There you go. Exhale. Perfect. Now all I want you to do is count to 10. I know it sounds silly. Just do it.
1, 2, 3,
Slower.
4, 5, 6.
So if you're not interested in mindfulness, one of the things that you can do at any point, which is for some people much more easier to do for them, is every once in a while, or maybe even set an alarm on your phone or something, and check in with yourself. You can do it right now. You can just say, how is my breathing? How is my body doing? How are my neck muscles doing? What's happening there? What are my legs doing? What's my torso doing? What are my shoulders doing? What are my arms doing? How am I feeling? What do I want right now? How's my breathing? Because for some people, especially if something is distressing, like a TV show that you're being triggered, your whole body can be real tight, your breathing can be shallow, and you could be real tense. And what that tells your inner brain, if you will, it's not an actual thing, but what it tells your nervous system, when you do this, it tells your nervous system that you're in danger. And then your nervous system sends out all these other signals and hormones and neurotransmitters to go to continue down the road of fight or flight. And when you're in a constant state of fight or flight, there's all sorts of bad things that can happen to your body and your psychology. And so it's important, particularly if you've been traumatized, because traumatized people are much more prone to fight or flight and ongoing distress, that you really take the time. Box breathing is another thing, right? Where you breathe in, you hold it for a while, you breathe out, you hold that for a while, you breathe in. That gives the signal to your brain and your nervous system that you're calm. If you're breathing calmly and you're relaxing your muscles, then it's telling your mind and your nervous system that, oh, you must not actually be being chased by a predator. When you're like this, your brain thinks you must be being chased by a predator, so we got to make sure we stay on guard and in a constant state of hypervigilance and stress. And to relax, then a lot of things happen. Obviously, your digestive system, your heart rate, your blood pressure, your sleep, you're less prone to eating to solve your problem, your appetite gets more regulated. It's all sorts of things that happen. You can look up the research on mindfulness and relaxation, but it's relaxation in general. So my point is that you can do mindfulness for sure, but there's a lot of relaxation techniques that you can do, biofeedback, this kind of thing. And when we do that, not only do we have all these physiological benefits, but we also have benefits relationally. John Gottman, researcher in Seattle for decades, looking at couples as they fight and as they get along, he hooked people up to various different biomarkers. And one of the things that they found in many, many studies was that in conflict with your spouse, all of those fight or flight reactions and biomarkers go up. Your heart rate, cortisol, sweaty palms, tense muscles, all those things. So when you're even when you're thinking about having a tense conversation with your spouse, your body goes into fight or flight, right? And it includes other things: fight, flight, freeze, appease, and faint. And so when you're in that state, your physiology, including your nervous system, shifts to a different mode. When we're being chased by a predator, we don't want to think about high math. We don't want to think about how to do complicated things. We don't want to think about how to get along with people. We have to think about one thing, which is survive, which is blood is drained away from the brain and goes to our muscles and goes to our heart rate, and so we can actually run. And when you're in that state of relational stress, your body is in that same state, which there's a number of effects. One is you actually can't think straight. It's hard to think rationally when you're in that situation because your body is going into a mode where it says you don't need to think about, I say math because it's like, complicated things. You don't need to think about complicated things. You need to think about one thing, which is running. The other thing is that you're in a survival mode, which means that you're defensive about things, right? So, but in order to get along in a conflict, you got to be relaxed, man. You got to be chill. Your whole body has to be relaxed, and you have to reassure your body that you're safe so that your nervous system is convinced that you're safe so that you can think straight and actually listen to the other person and not get defensive. It's very important. But the problem is people have no idea when they are having a fight or flight reaction. Or I'll say that to a certain level, and for some people, they have an even higher threshold, we're not aware of the fact that our body is starting to freak out, especially when we're really focused on defending ourselves against our spouse's accusations or something. And so relaxation and mindfulness and awareness are important skills to have when we are interacting with our spouses around tense things. Because without that, we get a little bit triggered. We might even be triggered just by the fact that we're having the conversation. We can't think straight. We're not hearing them. We get defensive. Things go wrong. If you're one of those people that knows, after the fight, you're like, oh, I did it again. And you're trying to figure out, why do I always go into a fight and say things that I regret? Well, one of the reasons might be because you're not doing what you need to do to relax yourself. Deep breathing, and hugging your partner will also bring down your heart rate and relax you. Because when you're running from a panther, people don't usually stop to hug each other, right? So when you hug someone, it signals to your body, oh, you must be out of danger. So that's another reason, holding their hand, that kind of thing. So very, very important. So just to extrapolate on what they're doing right here and apply it to other things, that's what I have to say.
7, 8, 9, 10.
That's it. Open your eyes. If you just take a minute to do that every time you get stressed out, it's going to improve your overall health.
Thanks, dude.
So that's great. A great beginning. But unless Colt does a lot of work on becoming aware of his distress level, he won't know when to do it. So it's a great tip, but a big part of that assumes that Colt understands when he's stressed out, 1. 2, it also assumes that there are times when he's not stressed out. It's possible he's always stressed out. There are people who have been traumatized and mistreated or been through things where they're at a constant level. The lowest stress they have is a 3 or 4 out of 10. And so there's a lot of other things that I would hope for Colt that he could investigate for himself to benefit so that he doesn't make the same mistakes in the future.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't know what I'm doing. Just a few years ago, I was back in Seattle, ready to plan a life with Larissa, I'm engaged to. And now I'm in Las Vegas, and I don't even know why I'm here.
He was back in Seattle? What does that mean? Is he from Seattle? What's happening there? Hey, deserving listeners, as you know, I'm constantly recommending that people go to therapy. We all need therapy from time to time. One of the options available that is definitely worth checking out is BetterHelp.com. So if you're looking for a therapist, I would give it a try by going to BetterHelp.com/Kirk. Make sure you use the /Kirk because you get 10% off your first month and it helps us out. I get a lot of emails from you saying that you're looking for a therapist. As you watch these videos, I know many of you have been motivated to find your own therapist, but I know it can be really hard to find a good one to work with. Like I said, one of the options available to try is BetterHelp.com/Kirk. And you should know that this service is available to clients worldwide, which is amazing. I've been told that you can start communicating with your therapist in under 24 hours. You can message with your counselor anytime. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. And I've been told that it's often less expensive than in-person therapy. So go to BetterHelp.com/Kirk to get 10% off your first month of therapy today.
Find the right woman. I think that's going to go away. But I really think you need to just focus on yourself like you have been.
Yeah.
I disagree. I don't think that it's just a matter of finding the right woman. I think it absolutely has to do with going to therapy to address the underlying issues, the underlying anxiety that results in panic deception that he involves himself in, that he panics in relational disapproval and lies as an automatic reaction. That is what he needs to address, in my opinion. And of course, my opinion is based on watching a TV show, so take that with a grain of salt.
How long after your divorce did you start
3 months, maybe 4.
You jumped in.
Yeah,
I feel like these women that you're dating always have a problem with their mom.
seems that way.
I know Debbie really comes from a good place in her heart. She has the best of intentions. But sadly, her interfering in these relationships is putting a lot of undue pressure and stress on Colt. And it's not allowing him to start from a clean, honest place. There's tension right from the beginning, and I think that's really working against him.
So certainly that's a sound conceptualization of his problems, but to me, the solution isn't what I think is being implied, which is he needs to live on his own or, draw a boundary with his mom. I mean, certainly that might help, but a holistic approach would be for both of them, Debbie and Colt, to grieve whatever grief that they haven't grieved, to have the both of them enter therapy individually, separately, so that they can work on whatever issues they have that drives them towards enmeshment, particularly for the mom. I'm guessing has a lot of suffering that she suffers from and relies on Colt because he's the only one in her life. And if she had other people in her life, she wouldn't need Colt that much and wouldn't be threatened as much when Colt is with other people. And there was also this other idea that was kind of out there in their conversation that he started dating too quickly after his divorce. And I've talked about this before. It's not clear, data-wise, empirical, science-wise, that dating soon after a divorce is a bad or a good thing. It's case-by-case basis. And it's a common notion that's out there in our culture of just like, you're supposed to wait a certain amount of time. What's the magical amount of time you're supposed to wait? Now, certainly some people will wait for good reasons, and some people won't wait for good reasons. It's fine. Some people won't wait for bad reasons. Some people will wait for bad reasons. It's just a heuristic that people have, a shortcut, if you will, that people have about what's healthy living that just isn't shown in the data. I think it emerges from our culture and it emerges from our own anxiety. If I have a friend who has had multiple relationships go badly for them, then a very easy solution is if they stop dating, right? It's like, well, if you just hold off for a while, then it'll postpone the annoyance to you and the annoyance for me because I have to watch you go through this. So just stop dating. So now, I'm not saying you're supposed to date. I'm just saying that people often defer to that as a solution of just stop dating, work on yourself, right? Especially friends and therapists actually fall into this trap as well. This notion of just like, hey, take a while before you date someone else, I think actually comes from an observer observing someone. It's like, I see you going through so much pain, and it pains me to see you go through that. And so you could just avoid that pain if you just don't ever date anybody ever again, right? But that is short-sighted. It doesn't address the whole thing. Again, there's nothing wrong with waiting if that's what you decide, but to just jump to that as an automatic, healthy thing, I find not necessarily true when I work with people.
I need to figure out a way to have a healthy relationship with her. We need to have some kind of boundaries.
Now, what I will say is that regardless of when you start dating, a much, much more important thing that people should be doing is going to therapy. There's no better time to go to therapy than right after a divorce or right after a breakup. It is a perfect time. A lot of people come into therapy at that moment. It is a wonderful time. You can vent, you can get support, you can cry, you can grieve, you can investigate what happened, you can think about what happened, you can plan for the future, you can try to avoid your foibles in the past, and you can even, and if you're starting to date, you can talk about those relationships with your therapist and say, this relationship is different in this way, and have a place to talk about that. So it's a wonderful time for therapy. So I wish people were much more ready to say, hey, regardless of if you start dating right away, I think you should go to therapy. It's a wonderful thing. I went to therapy. Here's a card of my therapist. They were great. Go to them.
She can still be my mother and love me, but I still need to take responsibility more.
How can you communicate that to your mom without her taking offense?
I don't know. I don't want to hurt her feelings. I know she loves me. She wants what's best for me, but I need to talk to her and tell her I'll be okay.
So I really love this conversation but it really should be done with a therapist that knows this sort of thing. I've worked with a lot of clients on this before, and many other family therapists have as well. And they're coming from a good place, but the broader campaign, if you will, is to change the relationship from a good relationship now to a different type of good relationship in the future. And that's how you sell it to everyone. Because to draw boundaries with, and that's all you're doing with mom, is just going to hurt her. There's just going to be a lot of bad feelings, and she might put a lot of emotional coercion as to cope with that. And then, Colt has to deal with that. Instead, the way you frame it for everyone is we have a style of relationship right now that doesn't really fit my lifestyle. And I don't really think it fits your lifestyle. I want to have a relationship with you, but I want it to be in a different configuration that fits our other lives, namely the fact that I'm looking for a companion in my life. And so I want to be close to you. I want to talk to you. I want to hang out. I want to involve you in my life, but I don't want to talk about the people I'm dating. I don't want you to interfere with those people. I don't want you to think you have the right to do that. And I don't want you to comment on things like that. So, and if we don't have those things, then actually I can be closer to you and we can actually enjoy our time together. And I don't want you to feel like you're in charge of my dating life. It just doesn't make me feel good. But I do want to be a part of your life. I want you to be a part of my life, but I don't want you to be a part of my life in that way. That'll free us up to be a part of each other's lives in this other way, that kind of thing. So you notice there, it's not really just drawing boundaries, which could come across as just rejection. You're saying, here's our style now, here's the style I want to get to, and there's all these benefits to this style. We won't have to fight anymore. You won't have to be exposed to the craziness of my dating. Think of all the free headspace that you'll have because of that. There's going to be a transition there, and there's going to be a lot of rules about our relationship that are going to have to change. There's going to be some self-control that each of us are going to have. I'm going to have self-control to expose you to that, meaning that I won't expose you to my dating life. And you're going to have self-control to not invade that and to not feel like that's a part of your jurisdiction. But that'll free us up to do all these other things. That's how you sell it to people, and that's really optimal. Because I don't think Colt wants to reject his mom, and certainly his mom doesn't want him to reject her. So when you phrase it that way, you actually have a path forward that's appealing for everyone that will actually work, instead of just saying, I'm going to draw a boundary even though I don't really have my heart in it because I still love my mom and I don't want to push her away. And then my mom's going to get angry at me, and then we'll just eventually find ourselves back where we began because neither one of us were very comfortable with me just pushing you away.
My mother loves me very much, and I think she just never wants to lose me. But I need her less involved in my relationships.
All right, if you catch us, I'm coming for you.
You live in a whole life a certain way. It's very difficult to break a pattern, but I think the only way I can move forward is to just say no to her interference. Thanks, buddy.
You got it, bro.
If you haven't subscribed below, that would be cool. Liking the video always makes me feel good, gives me self-esteem. And that's the end of that episode of Psychology in Seattle. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.